We're back again for another interview with Tony Armstrong and discussing his work related to the Biosphere project. And Tony, in previous interviews we talked about some of your own growing up years when you were studying engineering and living through the Cold War and working at National Defense, and how that kind of motivated you to start thinking about the Biosphere and how it developed as a design, and then you started building a prototype.
Yeah.
But today we're going to talk about a certain phase in that development where you started to look at publishing the Biosphere ideas in story form.
Yeah.
As another way of reaching people. I gather what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You're looking for another avenue to get the information out and to get people interested in the concept.
And like put it in the context that people could relate to, which is in the context of story. Like.
Yes, in a way that they wouldn't have to be a specialist to understand why you want to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I would say the book might be considered somewhat technical, so maybe only people that are interested in that type of thing would probably read it.
There was a term that you used I found interesting called Christian science fiction.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting term. What did you mean by that, Tony?
Well, it's telling a story that's related to prophecy in the Bible.
Yes. And it's a story about technology development.
Yeah, related again to prophecy. Like.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Christian science fiction. All right. So you thought after you'd done some initial design work in the Biosphere, you'd send it to some outlets, for instance, the radio station had done an interview with you.
Yeah.
You'd taken it to National Defense, some of the documents.
Yeah.
When did you first start thinking about telling a story? Or why did that, how did that come into your mind, Tony?
I mean, I worked on the drawings. There was maybe 80 or 90 drawings.
Okay.
And I developed what I call a 44-pager, which is the basic outline of the drawings with text that describe the drawings.
Yes.
And I worked on the foundation tapes, which are transcribed into documents.
Okay.
And I'd done all that, and I figured, and I don't know how much further I can go with this without trying to put it in context of how it might unfold, like in a story, like
see how it would be used, or what role it would play, not so much the details of how it was designed, but what could it actually do in a way that people would understand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So that's you start thinking what.
And that was about 2001 and 2002.
Okay.
I did the initial 2 chapters, which would stand alone as short stories, basically.
Okay.
One of them was called The Closure, which was when the Biosphere was sealed off in the midst of global conflict, and then indicating how the developers were working on to get it completed to meet the deadline of closing it off before the atmosphere was too contaminated. Like.
Yes. Yes.
So I mean, I'd worked on that, that's an introduction to understanding the context of the Biosphere, basically.
Okay.
To see how people would actually feel or think about what was going on at that time, if it happened in the near future, and to see how they would focus their energy, try to put on blinders, basically, to just work on the Biosphere and knowing the threat of what's going on in other parts of the world.
Probably a very difficult situation to work in, yeah.
It's, I mean, similar to what's going on now. There's lots of alarming news about Russia and China. Yeah. And
people are frightened.
People are frightened. I mean, they don't know what to think about it, but I mean, people try to focus on their work and their family, basically.
Yes.
I mean, that would be nice. Frankly, I mean, I'd like to do that, but and sometimes I do, but I mean, I also focus on the Biosphere.
Yes. Tony, in that situation, it's difficult enough for those people to focus, as you said, because there's lots of things happening in the world that would distract them or concern them.
Yeah.
How would they decide, or how would it be decided who should go in the Biosphere?
Who should go in the Biosphere? Yeah. Well, I know that there would be at least 50,000 people initially in the Biosphere. Okay.
And that would expand over time
to
with population growth to 150, about the time that they'd be able to come out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say it was 50,000 people. That's the size of a small town, say.
Yeah, I know it's tough, man. I mean, first of all, the people that go in would have to want to go and live in the Biosphere.
Yes.
They would get each two to three people would get 2,100 square feet of living space.
Yeah.
They would be employed either in rough terms employed, like in the science engineering complex,
Okay.
or the medical complex, which is very large,
Okay.
or the recreation complex,
Uh-huh.
or the ocean complex, or the city center, which is also called the Gray Center.
Okay.
And there's different tasks or jobs that have to work in that context.
Yes, so they'd all contribute to the
And then there's
society.
also on the top of the towers, each of the 12 towers, there's common facilities like sports,
Mm-hmm.
shops,
Leisure.
retail,
Okay.
libraries, and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Okay.
As you say, leisure and yeah.
Okay.
That's more community stuff. But there would be people employed in that too. Like there'd be people employed in the biomes in the corners as well, to do farming and to do preservation of different species of plants and animals.
Right.
There'd be a lot of people employed even in the Christ Center. That's where the genetic and seed repository is.
Okay.
There'd be a lot of people employed on that.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be people employed in maintaining the infrastructure,
Of course.
which
yeah.
also includes robotic systems that have to be maintained and developed.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be people employed in even the freshwater pools, like the freshwater life.
Sure. Yeah.
Some of it would be used for food,
Mm-hmm.
and some would be used like to maintain a freshwater system
Source for drinking
yeah,
water.
yeah,
All those things. So really, had a whole range of skills that
yeah,
that would be
exactly.
needed,
Yeah.
right?
And people would have to want to be a part of that, like.
You want it, so that's a good point.
Yeah.
And then also
And
part of
there's
this would-
transportation vehicles as well.
transportation, and
Yeah.
part of this is we have some adults, but we would also have children in the
Yeah, we
community.
would have children. I'm not sure how many. I would say at least 10,000, like
Okay.
maybe 20.
So
but
maybe 20% of the population would be children, something like that to start
maybe,
with.
yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And then of course there'd need to be teachers. There's a whole education component, right?
Yeah, there would be teachers. Yeah, and there'd be teachers to teach adults too.
Yes, adult training, adult
Yeah.
education. that's
There
all
would
part
also
of it.
be like, I mean, in the basic breakdown of human factors in the biosphere, there's like physical, emotional, spiritual,
Mhm.
and physical, emotional, spiritual, and
Intellectual.
yeah, that's the other one. And that would involve maintaining publications
Okay.
for ongoing research in different areas.
Okay. Yeah.
There would even be publications for like, there'd be craft that going out of the biosphere to try to restore ecosystems.
Mm-hmm.
And there would be updates on that, like what these craft are accomplishing and how well their process
So
is
sort
going.
of feedback there.
Yeah.
Okay. It's really, in a way, it's like a sample of a whole world.
It is,
it's
yeah.
like a whole world.
Sure, the
operating.
recreation complex would have a sports like stadium,
Yeah.
and this is in drawings, like
Okay.
simple drawings.
Yes.
Like there'd be rinks for hockey
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah, yeah.
There'd be a major wave pool and
Swimming.
smaller athletic pools.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be a broadcast center. There'd be an opera house and theaters.
Okay, for that side.
Yeah, there'd even be, I mean, in the original plan, and I'm not sure if it would still be this way, but on the upper level of the recreation complex, there's a 9-hole golf course.
Wow. So there's all kinds of a range of for a range of interests and abilities are required and
Yeah.
Considered in designing all of this.
Yeah.
Tell me about this character. We had talked earlier, and you mentioned it, in telling this story, as you
Yeah.
started to tell the story, and it came out in several shorter stories and then later on in a book, but there was a key character who appears in those stories called Nathan Daniels.
Nathan Daniels.
Where did Nathan come from, Tony? What's Nathan based on?
You mean,
His character, his life
yeah,
history?
his life is based on what I went through.
I was
to a
going to
certain
say,
extent, yeah.
it really goes through
Yeah.
a lot of what you experienced
Yeah.
as you were growing up
Yeah.
and trained as an engineer.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a way, Nathan Daniels is the story form of yourself as a character in the
Yeah.
story.
Originally, the first several chapters are nonfiction, basically,
Okay.
but it merges into fiction after that.
Christian science fiction, if you
Christian
like.
science fiction, yeah.
Okay. So you have these shorter stories that you develop first, and in the meantime, you're still in parallel. You're still designing the biosphere
Yeah.
and working on the technical part of
Yeah.
it. You've got these shorter stories. When did you decide you'd like to actually write a book?
It basically happened when I had more time,
Okay.
and I figured I had the resources at that time too to do it, which was about 2019, 2020.
Okay.
And
So about 20 years after you first started telling your shorter stories.
Yeah, I
so
mean,
you thought about this for a long time.
Sure, a couple of years before that, before the 2019, I'd written the, after a Christmas dinner, I came home and I started writing up the, more of the finishing of the story.
Oh.
And I also at that point, roughly at that point, wrote the opening chapter, which deals with part of the Bible in terms of what happened to Jesus when he was crucified, resurrected, and ascended. I looked at that again in a science fiction context,
okay,
to try to fill out some of the mythology, or well, I mean, it's not supposed to be mythology. It's supposed to be what was presented in the Bible is pretty much fact. But then the question is, for some of it, is there a hidden process that we don't know about? Like, and so I was trying to fill out what could be considered a hidden process. It could be considered maybe blasphemy by some people, but I mean, I don't change what the message is.
No.
I just change what the mechanism,
yes.
interpreting the mechanism.
Because maybe the people who were writing the Bible, they certainly wouldn't have had the benefit of modern technology,
yeah.
right, or understood
just
that.
Like, say, Ezekiel, wheels within wheels. I mean, a lot of ufologists believe that vision that Ezekiel had was an extraterrestrial craft. Like,
wow. There you go.
And there's other examples, like Elijah being taken up in a chariot of fire.
Yep.
And there's there's interpretation as to what a chariot of fire is like.
Yes. In those days, that's how they would describe it. But
yeah.
maybe if they were describing it today, they'd use different terminology.
Yeah, I mean, in the context of Jesus ascending into the heavens, like through the clouds, I mean, I thought about that for a long time, and I thought, well, he wouldn't just be resting in the clouds, like floating around, like doing whatever he would do. I think there's a deeper process that went on when that happened, like. And that's what I reflect in the opening chapter of the story. Like.
Okay. When you wrote the story, when did you get involved with the publisher?
Publisher, I think it was late. It was sometime in 2019.
Okay. And the publisher's name was Telwell?
Telwell, yeah.
Okay. Tony's holding a copy of the book, the paper book.
The NJ-12 Biosphere.
Yep.
Let me see now. Okay, published totally in 2020, so I think it was 2019.
When you first got in touch with him?
I got inflicted with COVID sometime during that process, so
oh my goodness.
It took longer to finish it. Like, yeah.
But when you started to write the book, you had a draft.
Yeah.
I guess they provided some editing services.
Exactly, 2 rounds of editing, basically.
And helped also with suggestions with the design of the cover and the layout and all of that stuff. Did you feel it was a good company to work with?
Sure, yeah, I thought it was very good, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I should mention also, Tony showed us a copy of the paper book, and that paper book is available in some bookstores. I know in Ottawa it's
in Amazon.
But the other interesting news is it's also available as an electronic book.
Sure.
Through Amazon.
Kindle, I guess, on Amazon.
Kindle on Amazon, which is very interesting. It means people anywhere in the world can get access to it if they want.
It's also on Indigo Chapters.
Indigo Chapters, yes.
And Barnes & Noble.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
As electronic books.
Well, you can order a paper copy.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that their marketing or their search engines can point people to that.
If you know how to find it.
Tony, can you tell us the title of the book again, just so people know? Just show them a copy of that.
It's called the NJ-12 Biosphere, and the name on it, as the author, is A. Armstrong.
Okay.
And the subtitle says "How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It."
How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It.
Right.
The NJ-12 Biosphere by A. Armstrong.
Yeah.
So that came out about 2 years ago now. Right?
Yeah.
It was first available.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you're making your information available physically to a much larger audience.
I'm trying to. It's a hard sell.
Of course, and also you're trying to, in the content and the way you tell the story, make it more accessible to people who might not be thinking about building the biosphere. They just are interested in how it would be used, how it would fit into the human story, really.
Sure, and I mean, it's a new paradigm of understanding. Like, I mean, people look into the future and they see different things, and some people, think we'll get over our aggression on the planet and get along. Other people think there could be more aggression, and the end of the story actually has a different perspective on the whole process of a biosphere, by talking about another timeline where it's not necessary to have a biosphere, and people resolve conflict without hurting each other.
This is very, very interesting to me. So Tony sees the biosphere as a response to a nuclear war, is one way of
Yeah.
looking at it. You know,
Yeah.
the worst that we can imagine has happened, and you have to deal with the recovery from a nuclear war. That's one way of looking at the future. The other way is that the biosphere serves as a type of deterrent
Yeah.
and encourages us to cooperate and
Yeah.
be more peaceful.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that, Tony, because it's very hopeful.
Well, I mean, the only way that would be possible, actually, if you did more groundwork on development. I mean, I've done some of the groundwork, but could do a lot more if I had resources, which I don't have. But if you had a team of people working on it, this is part of the DARPA proposal too, actually. A team of maybe five to 10 people filling out the design and everything, and they would do that in a semi-classified environment, like.
Yes.
And they would, and as they fill out more of the design, they might publish some of it, and it would be a warning, basically.
Yes.
This
is what we're going to have to do unless the world cooperates, right?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Or becomes less aggressive.
Yeah.
So sometimes that kind of development actually gives people the incentive to become more cooperative.
Just
right?
like I believe when there was bad things going on during the First Cold War.
Yes.
I mean, there was a scientist called Carl Sagan.
Yes.
Who made a big point of talking about a nuclear winter that would come out of a nuclear war. So people started thinking, and particularly probably military planners, that okay, if we're going to have a nuclear winter, you know, then there might not be as much survivability, and then maybe we should think about reducing our weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, the concept that people were trying to grapple with was nuclear war.
Yes.
The way to put it in context, you come up with these other concepts. You know, like, I mean, some people think you could easily survive a nuclear war. Other people think it'd be impossible. But if you throw out the concepts, and you hash them out, you throw them out there, you hash them out, you try to figure out, you know, what the reality of the whole thing is.
And people's awareness is raised.
Yeah,
right?
and then maybe you get around doing a worst case scenario.
People change their behaviors because of that.
Yeah.
We're going to leave it there for now from this point of view, this stage of the interview, but that's really describing how Tony took his concepts, the technical concepts in the model, and funneled them into some stories that he's published for the general public and the science fiction audience to read. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Peter.